David Weaver, Megan Wallen, Tom Pop. Securities offered through HD Vest Investment Services, member SIPC. Advisory services offered through HD Vest Advisory Services, 6333 North State Highway 161, 4th floor, Irving, Texas, 75038, 972-870-6000. SWC Wealth Management is not a registered broker-dealer or independent investment advisory firm. It's now time for User-Friendly Finance with Dave Weaver from SWC Wealth Management on News Radio, WHP 580. If you have a question for Dave, call 540-0580. Now with today's show, here's Dave Weaver.
Hi, good morning. This is Dave Weaver with SWC Wealth Management and User-Friendly Finance. Thanks for joining us for another week. Today we're going to talk about New Year's resolutions in the financial way. You know, what kind of financial New Year's resolutions have you made? That'll be our subject today. Tom Pop's joining me today.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are
Happy
you?
New Year. Good.
It's the New Year's resolution is always a interesting subject. But before we get into that, before we get into our subject of the day, we'll talk about our locations. We have two locations. We're located in Palmyra and in Carlisle. Both of those can be reached via our main number at 717-706-0700 or via the web at swcwealth.com. In Palmyra, we're at 103 West Main Street, and in Carlisle, we're at 35 East High. And both of those are very conveniently located about a block off the square. It looks like we're starting to get some minor changes into our website.
It's getting there.
So we're hopefully by the end of the month, we'll have everything kind of redone, revamped, and a little easier for you to navigate, hopefully. The services that we provide are retirement planning, which includes customized portfolios. We do estate planning, and that includes helping people with trying to plan for both not just your estate, but also navigating your assets as you try to either plan around or for a nursing home, college planning, tax planning, which we'll talk a little bit probably in our next show, and then 401k evaluations. If you have a 401k, you're not sure how to invest it, I think companies are doing less and less work with helping you try to actually figure out how to invest. And a lot of that's because of the fiduciary responsibility that they have, and they're uncomfortable with taking on the liability of telling you how to invest. But we help people with that. We also offer insurance and annuities, and that includes fixed annuities and equity index annuities, variable annuities, life insurance, all those things, plus long-term care insurance if that's something that you're looking for in the market for. So I think that's generally the service that we provide. Again, you can reach us during the week at 717-706-0700 or via the web at swcwealth.com. And that will be, I guess, it for our contact information, and we'll go ahead and start talking about our subject for the day. I think I found an article that talked about, and this will be sort of in line with what Tom and I talked about before the show, but the 5 top financial New Year's resolutions for people. And people have all kinds of subjects when they talk about starting the new year and changing, the different things that you're doing. But a lot of people have finance as part of that. And 80% of Americans are making money-related resolutions that they believe can change their lives for the better. Unfortunately, a lot of those are similar to the ones that you do for your physical fitness or your marriage or just about anything else. You take, you get part of the way through the year and you realize that you haven't really made much progress.
And then you give up.
Yeah, then you give up. Mid-year, you reevaluate, figure out where you're at. Hopefully that's what you do with some of these. But the top 5 financial goals, and this was compiled by Principal Financial, is the first was save more money every month. About 40% of people had that. Pay off credit card debt is about 32% of people. Reduce spending is 31%. Sock away more for retirement is 27%, and build an emergency fund was the final one. So those are the goals that people that they say are the top 5 financial goals for the year. How does that align with what we came up with, Tom?
Yeah, I think a lot of the goals that people are trying to accomplish in the beginning of the year, both financially and also, physically or whatever your goal might be, typically trying to come up with a budget, save more, spend less. That's always a big one, and save more for retirement. I know that's my personal goal for the financial goal for this year is to save more for retirement, and really should probably look at that every year. And as you're getting older and getting closer to retirement, even if you're 20, 30 years out, just adding a little bit more every year, I think is really an important thing to do. But yeah, with that, I think a lot of the keys to a successful resolution is to really set more of a manageable number of goals. And Dave talked about that earlier. You know, don't set yourself up for failure by having too lofty of a goal. It's good to have something realistic in place, and to really just to create habits rather than trying to accomplish something. Because if you're creating a habit, let's just say spend more, or let's just say you want to save more for retirement, and you set that up automatically, and you're really changing your spending habits to do that, it's really going to help you in the long term.
Yeah, I guess saving more money is something that we all want to save money. It always sounds like a lofty goal. We all want to save money. The one thing that stops us from doing it is we don't always have a clear sense of where our paychecks are going. Right. So one of the first things that we try to do is work with people to set up a budget. If people don't have one, even in the retirement planning meetings that we have, one of the first things we ask people to do is take a look at what their budget is and what their budget will be in retirement, because a lot of people don't have a clear sense of, what they're actually spending. Without a budget or without some kind of idea what your budget is, you don't have an accurate way to track your spending or identify where you can cut corners.
Right. Yeah, that really is the key to financial success when it comes to your goals, is to create a budget. And really, honestly, nobody really likes to do a budget. It's not all that fun, but it doesn't have to be really that painful either. And at the end of the day, it's really going to help you figure out where you can cut back and how you can save. And the way we like to do it, we start with a zero balance budget. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with at the top, we'll have what you're bringing in for the month. We'll look back at the last 3 to 6 months to average what your monthly expenses are. And at the bottom of the budget, it should net out to zero, so that every dollar is going somewhere. So you have a line item there for retirement, you have a line item for savings, mm-hmm. and then you have all your expenses as well. And then that way, you're efficiently using your money in all areas. And then you can create line items for additional budget or additional savings or whatever you'd like to accomplish.
Yeah, budgeting is, it really doesn't take long to set up a budget. No. It takes a little more time to track it. And depending on how, I think it's important that couples work together to define that, even if they only meet with maybe once a quarter every 6 months, to at least have a general understanding of what's going on with the family money. What you want to try to avoid is have a big category of other that's maybe a third of your paycheck, so that another might be Turkey Hill, Sheets, all the different places where you stop in and just, drive. Starbucks would be another one, I guess. Where
all that discretionary money that just goes out the window. And that's where a lot of people find that they can cut back on. And again, it reverts back to creating those habits of not going out to eat every
I think that's
night.
Actually one of the biggest ones I'm seeing. I was going to mention that going out to eat has turned out to be one of the biggest. It's getting so convenient to get food into your house or to your car, I guess. One of the two of those that people spend a lot of money on that without even actually realizing. And a lot of times when people are cutting their budgets, that's one of the first things they can cut mm-hmm. and make a significant difference. For me, when I lived in town, I still sort of live in town, but not a town that has any stores you can go to. So we don't do a lot of last minute mm-hmm. Dinners. But if you, we used to do takeout a lot or home delivery, and that gets expensive too. All of it costs money. Anyway, with that, we'll take a break and get back to our subject of New Year's financial resolutions. You give us a call here at 540-0580 or 800-724-5801. This is Dave Weaver with User Friendly Finance. Okay, we're back. This is Dave Weaver and Tom Pop with SWC Wealth Management, and we're here on User Friendly Finance talking about the process of trying to create a successful New Year's resolution. We started off maybe too quickly by saving more money, which is, I think we went through the list of the top 5 financial goals that people have, and then we were starting to walk through some of what those are. But Tom, what are some of the keys to successfully creating a financial New Year's resolution that you can keep to?
Yeah, so we talked about trying to set the manageable number of goals or something realistic. So that's really, I think, the most important thing a lot of people overlook. The second thing would be to really commit to a plan and congratulating yourself for hitting those milestones. So essentially rewarding yourself for doing a good job. I think that keeps you involved.
One thing back on the first one we had talked about, one of our clients, we are getting ready to meet again, but a year ago set the goal of saving $35,000 a year. And I think the goal was so lofty that it turned out to be nothing. I don't think there was any money put away
at all
towards the goal because it was too big. So you do want to cut it off into manageable chunks so that it's not quite so overwhelming. Maybe a goal of, so many dollars a month would have been more achievable, and then you have a better sense at half year that you haven't saved $17,500, but you've maybe saved 500 or
at least something, and then you don't get discouraged and give up. So a lot of times you set yourself up for failure by doing that.
Yeah, just like weight loss or exercise or a lot of those other things where the gym is really full for the first week or the first month, and then by February it's a pretty lonely place again. I'll go to the gym today and I'll expect to see a full packed house.
Oh yeah, this is the busy time of year for sure. So yeah, really committing to that and congratulating yourself for doing it. Sticking to your resolution by tracking your progress. I think when we talk about budgeting, that might be the hardest thing for people to do. They can go ahead and set up the budget and know, okay, they need to spend X amount of money on, let's just say, discretionary funds or just going out to eat or something. But then they're not tracking that.
Right. And even if you don't track it in detail, maybe each person gets so much a week.
Yeah.
A husband and wife, they each get, I don't know, whatever number works for their household. And then at the end of the week, they have to maybe or maybe not be accountable for that. Maybe they were given that much money.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if they spend it or not, but, maybe that's what goes into additional savings on top of whatever they had planned.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of different ways to do that now. I think with technology, Mint, for example, is a free app that you can use to track to see how you're doing with your spending.
Mint,
yep. There's an M envelopes, which is kind of like the envelope system.
The old envelope system comes
back, and now that's you can actually get an app for that as well, which also helps you not only track, but it'll separate your money out into different envelopes and let you know how much you've used for groceries. So that if you have to run to the store, you're not just thinking, oh, how much have I spent already on groceries? You can actually see on your phone.
Yeah, some of our old-time most successful savers have started with the envelope system.
Yep. So it's come back in technologically advanced ways. And then I guess the last key is really to find ways to be accountable. And we also kind of talked about that as well. Involving a spouse always helps. And also just working with a financial advisor. I mean, they're probably the best accountability partner you can have.
Right. Yeah, because they're sort of they're unbiasedly looking at the results and hopefully not necessarily criticizing, but helping you, work to a plan that works for you.
Yep.
A financial advisor is, we always say you don't have to use us, but you should use somebody that's in your court helping you develop a plan, help you manage to your plan and monitor it over time. So those are important things. So getting back to some of the things that, those are kind of the steps to create and manage to a successful plan. We talked about saving money. Everybody wants to save a little bit more money. I guess one of the next big areas is eliminating debt.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah,
if you're carrying a big balance on your credit cards, you're not alone. Credit card debt recently reached an all-time high in the United States with the average balance somewhere near $16,000, which seems staggering to me. I don't know. That seems awful high, but even regardless of what the balance is, a lot of people are carrying credit card balances month to month, paying exorbitant interest rates. We very rarely, not rarely, but it's very common that we meet with people that will have a credit card bill that's rolling. It'll be 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, whatever it is. What you're doing is paying an exorbitant fee for money, and the problem is that every day you carry a balance, you're accumulating interest charges over time, end up growing past the amount that you borrowed in the first place. So if you're serious about paying off your debt, you need you need the budget we just talked about, and then you want to start try to see where you're wasting money and try to figure out how you pay down the credit card debt.
Right. So stop spending money out to eat, and then using that extra money to go pay off your credit card bill first.
Yeah, and we've had people that are carrying credit card debt just to pay dinner, just to buy meals out.
Yeah.
And I've always said that credit card debt is insidious. People, you start with one card and it may have a $2,000 balance before you know it. You want to buy a new TV or something, so you transfer that balance to another card, get a new card. You haven't paid off the first $2,000. Now you got a TV on the next card. Pretty soon that gets the balance. Before you know it, you have 3 or 4 cards that are at or near their max. You're paying the minimum on all your cards or whatever your strategy is and never feeling like you're making progress. So you want some kind of strategy to manage yourself out of debt. That's one of the big things classes like Dave Ramsey's class try to work with people to help understand, or come up with an approach to dealing with nailing down or reducing down your debt.
Yeah, there's a lot of good programs out there that can help you achieve that, and it's a great New Year's resolution if you haven't looked at it before, and you are carrying a lot of debt to sit down and go over that with somebody.
And also, if you're funding your month-to-month bills through your credit cards, and not just that you don't have a strategy for paying down your credit card debt, but if you're adding every month to your balance on your credit cards because your monthly bills, including that credit card debt, are having to be paid with credit cards, you've got a problem that you need to look at, because that number just grows and then accumulates. And if you're paying, 20% interest, or whatever the number turns out to be, it doesn't take very long for you to build up a really healthy balance. And eventually you are paying as much in interest as you're charging for that month. So the extra household bills that you're paying now include a credit card debt that may be bigger than all the meals you ate out for the month. So it's
Right.
It can be a bad, insidious problem, I think, and it's very hard to get out of. You have to come up with a strategy. We occasionally get calls, I think a lot of times from the show actually, where people have accumulated large amounts of credit card debt and can't figure out how to get out. Sometimes it gets so bad that people may have to file for bankruptcy or Chapter 11 just to get out of the credit card debt that they have. You don't want to do that, and hopefully you never get to that situation or to that point.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to have a strategy before it gets that bad. And again, we've had some older people that have ended up in that situation, and sometimes maybe the best answer is to file bankruptcy or do something about your debt, but hopefully you attack it way before it becomes that big of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing that we talk about, and I guess all this stuff sort of ties back to your the initial budget, is that we all have expenses that are fixed, like your rent, or if you have student loan payments, things that are variable. You have separate expenses that are variable, like your grocery bills, utility bills. And if you're serious about cutting your spending, then you'll definitely need to try to figure out how you attack your spending. The only way to really do that is to somehow create either a budget or some kind of accountability sheet or something that lets you figure out what you're actually spending your money on. If you're spending about $200 a month on eating out or taking out, and you're $200 short at the end of the month, that'll point to your problem pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to eat out. That's the thing. We've gotten so used to the convenience of fast food and eating out that it's become a problem.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's easier said than done, because people do get busy and it's very convenient. So a lot of times, maybe instead of just saying, I'm going to cut back on this, maybe the goal is to find time to prepare meals for the week so that you don't get caught in a situation where you need to go out and eat.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just becomes a time management goal.
Right.
That ends up creating down the road a better habit that then allows you to save money.
Yeah, and there's no doubt about it. It's hard when you have young kids or whatever, and you got, baseball games, and there's always something that gets in the way, and there's always, not always, but a lot of times there's food available at the events, and you get into the bad habit of convenience and not doing it at home. There are different strategies for trying to get a handle on your bills in terms of entertainment, and that turns out to be one of the things. You don't want to cut entertainment out. You don't want fun out of your budget. You just want to have it be a manageable number. If you can't afford, 15 or 20 movies a month, then you shouldn't go see 15 or 20 movies a month. Maybe you see 5 movies or, whatever it is that's the problem in your budget. So the next thing that I had was trying to build your nest egg. And I guess that includes, the plan of trying to save for your retirement. Roughly 1/3 of Americans have absolutely no retirement savings. It's safe to say that those people are on a really dangerous path because it's very difficult now to live on Social Security. If you think about the amount you're getting on Social Security, it may pay on average about half of what your expenses are. If you don't have some way to supplement that, you're on a really dangerous path for the longest period of your life, or I guess not the longest period of your life, but a long retirement, which might be 25 or 30 years. We'll get back, cover that after the break. This is Dave Weaver and Tom Pop. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call at 717-540-0580 or 800-724-5801. We have the $10 Panera gift cards for people that call in. Interested to hear your thoughts on your own New Year's resolutions. This is Dave Weaver and Tom Pop with User Friendly Finance. Ooh, we're early in the morning. This is Dave Weaver and Tom Pop with User Friendly Finance, and we're talking about the subject of New Year's financial resolutions. We're not too far into the new year. Now's a good time to do it. If you didn't take the time over New Year's during your celebration of New Year's, now's a good time, now that you're recovered and ready to go, to face the new year and come up with your New Year's resolutions. We'll get back to talking about retirement savings and looking at your retirement planning. But one of the things that you want to do, and maybe as a starting point, even before your budget, is to calculate your net worth if you haven't already done so. Maybe start with calculating your net worth, see if you're where you're at, where you want to be. New Year's is as good a time as any is trying to figure out what you're actually worth, and looking closely at all your assets and liabilities will help you create a picture of where you're currently putting your spending and savings, and where you think you might need changes to actually hit your goals. So it's a good idea to recalculate. Holy moly! Recalculate. What's wrong with my recalculate today? Recalculate your net worth each year to keep on top of your progress, just in general, to see how you're doing from one year to the next. Have you put more away in savings from one year to the next? Even if you don't actually do the budget, it's a good idea to see where you're at, and that may be enough to spur you to action to look at a budget. There are a lot of tools out there to help you figure out your net worth, but basically what you're doing is putting down the things that you own and the things that you owe. And when you put those two together, that'll tell you what your net worth is. And your home, as an example, if your home is worth $250,000, but you owe $200,000 on it, then that, towards your net worth number, that comes out to be $50,000. So you add that, your savings accounts, your checking accounts, subtract your credit cards and whatever debt you might have, your mortgage, your car loans, all those things, and then figure out where you're at, get that point in time, and then just looking at that may help you decide where you need to make some changes and what the important aspects are as you're putting together your budget. You might find
you have a lot in assets, but you also have a lot in liabilities.
Right.
So maybe you need to tackle more of the liability side.
Or
either way.
Yeah, and if you're sitting at, very close to retirement and you still owe for a boat, 2 cars, your house, and you're getting close to retirement, and particularly if you've haven't done the planning and only have Social Security to fall back on, you're going to have trouble paying all that debt if all you have is Social Security income coming in. And you may, just looking at that, may tell you need to work to 65 or 67 or maybe even longer if your balance sheet doesn't look good.
It's a good start for the retirement plan.
Yeah. So with that, again, the beginning of the year is a good time to reset your retirement savings plan. At work, you have the opportunity to save for retirement typically through a 401k, a 403b, or some type of retirement plan. If you have access to those, or if you're still working, or a simple plan if you're in a small employer, if you have access to those plans, it's a good time to take a look at that number. If you put together your net worth and you put together your budget, maybe you have the opportunity to put a little more towards savings.
Yeah, and that's really my goal for the year too. I'm going to put more into retirement this year. And if anything, if you don't have a New Year's resolution, I think that's a good one, just to increase if you can, and you can put up to 18.5 into a 401k now.
Yeah.
Plus the catch up, which puts it at what, 24,000.
Yeah, I think so. 23.
If you're over
50,
and then 6,500 into an IRA. So.
Yeah, depending on what you make overall. Yeah, so look at how much you are comfortable with putting towards retirement savings, and we never really recommend that people starve themselves in their day-to-day budget in order to fund a retirement savings account. But
just a little.
Yeah, try to balance. And if you get a 1% raise, if you get a 2% raise or a 3% raise, maybe you put a 1% add-on into your retirement plan so that you are gradually increasing that over time. We have a lot of people that add, just as a plan, add 1% more to their retirement every year. If you're in a 401k and you started at 3%, you put in 1%, your employer may actually match another percent or 0.5%, depending on the plan. At the very least, in retirement, you want to put in at least what your employer is matching. That should be the very lowest of your target, because that allows you to get a 100% return on your money almost immediately.
Yep.
So the other thing to do is look at how you're allocated and see if your allocation is appropriate for the time and for the savings time frame that you have. And I guess that would be something that you should be doing either by yourself or with the help of a financial advisor.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So with that, we have a call on line one. This is Alyssa, and we'll pick her up now. Alyssa?
Yes, good morning. I'm enjoying your show, and you really do give out a really good advice.
Thank
you. I'm like a perfect prime example of not knowing how to do all this, like in the earlier stages of our, well, because we did none. We were the worst planners, and now, in a way, it has affected the way we do things, okay? But basically, because of not looking down the road with all the suggestions that you're talking about, Dave, is the fact that where do children and helping them out come into stopping them from ruining your budget and planning?
You mean for adult kids or young kids?
Adult, yeah, helping them out and different things, and maybe not getting the money back along the way. And then that changes once you get wise enough to do what you're recommending with planning and budgeting. It puts you back a few notches.
Yeah, I think it helps very early on to get in touch with a financial advisor, just to have like an accountability partner. And in our office, if people come in and don't really have a good budget, that's one of the first things we have them take a look at. And we've had a couple younger couples where we basically just start from scratch, give them an outline, have them come back to us in 3 weeks or a month and review that just to make sure the categories look appropriate, that see if they have any kind of issues or problems, and then revisit it maybe 6 months after that and maybe a year after that. And then at that point, hopefully people seem to either get budgeting or don't get budgeting.
We didn't. We didn't even know about it until recently how to really, focus on doing this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you're trained young or if you start young,
Yeah.
first if your parents teach you,
Yeah.
that helps a lot, and then if you have a lot of times it helps when people get married, just because one or the other is
Mhm.
budget oriented or financial oriented, but
Mm.
but it
There's
can be a
so much
problem.
to tell them. We have a grandchild that is engaged, and do you know? I already told her. I said, when you talk about your marriage and so on, please go to a financial advisor in the beginning, not right away, but in the beginning to get your life in a certain order financially.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
I've learned this over the years because we didn't do it.
One of the things some of the churches do even is as they do the marriage counseling for people before they get married, one of the things that they look at is budgeting because finances are one of the most important, one of the big things that can help drive a marriage,
Sure.
to be a problem
Yeah.
because if people have different views on money and don't realize it, it can be a real cause of strife within the
I
marriage.
believe that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm learning. But I thought, well, you're talking about retirement. Well, all this with not knowing all this, now it's making our retirement thing a little stretched. So
Yeah.
I just think that people ought to realize how really important it is to see people like yourself, to talk about all this.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
Thank you.
thanks. I think thanks for your input because I think a lot of people don't. A lot of people need help that don't realize it, and a lot of people could use help and don't realize it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess with that, we'll take a break, and Art will grab your information for the gift card. And thank you very much for calling, and have a great
Thank you
day.
for all your advice.
Okay, thanks a lot. Hi, this is Dave Weaver and Tom Pop again with User Friendly Finance, and we go into our last segment here as we're talking about the subject of New Year's financial resolutions or financial resolutions for the new year, whichever way you look at it, I guess. One thing we just wanted to mention again that we have two offices. We're located in Palmyra and Carlisle. And Palmyra, we're at 103 West Main, and Carlisle, 35 East High, so both on the East Shore and the West Shore. Both offices can be reached at 717-706-0700. Yeah, 717-706-0700, or you can reach us via the web at swcwealth.com. So if you give us a call, we try to get every call returned within 24 hours, or every email that we get, we try to respond to pretty quickly as well. So if you need some help, if you're looking at your own personal financial situation, you're getting ready for the new year and you want some help working on your own plan, just like we talked with callers, some people realize it but don't do anything about it. Some people don't realize it but need it. If you need help, give us a call or give somebody a call, financial planner, to help you work through your personal financial situation. So we were talking about your retirement plan itself. Try to make sure you're contributing to your 401k, 403b, or simple, whatever your retirement plan is at work. If you don't have a plan available, if you're self-employed, you can set up a solo 401k or a SEP or simple for yourself. If you have a plan but your income allows you, don't forget there are IRAs. And even if you have a retirement plan at work, depending on your income, you can contribute to a traditional or Roth. And even non-working spouses can do a spousal IRA as long as their spouse has income. So don't forget about the vehicles that are out there to help you actually save for your retirement. There are a lot of ways to do it. If you haven't started, you always hear it's never too late to start. It really isn't ever too late to start something. Anything you do is to your benefit, and not doing anything is definitely not to your benefit. As you heard the last caller, if you start and wait too late, you're not going to hit your goals as you've got them defined. So, as we wrap up here on the subject of New Year's resolutions, one of the first things you want to do is update your savings and debt reduction goals. So we started with a budget. We start with calculating your net worth, creating a budget, and then evaluating some of the things that you can do. But try to update your savings and debt reduction plans. And some other things you might want to look at are rebalancing your portfolio. Mm-hmm. If you haven't already done that, your previous year is no different than any other year. Some sectors do good, some do poorly. It's easy in like a year like we just had where the equity side will be if you started out with a 60% stock, 40% bond allocation, and you're not really paying attention to it, now it's 70% stock and 30% bonds, and all of a sudden you're more heavily weighted in the market than you want to be.
Yeah, it's a really good idea to rebalance right now. And not only that, but just to look at and review your investments in case you don't really ever do that. Because a lot of people put money into a 401k, they don't really know what they're invested in.
Right.
It's just a really good idea to take a look and see what you're invested in and make sure you're allocated appropriately.
Yeah.
Some people are not.
And if you don't know what your allocation should be, either read up on it or get with a financial advisor to come up with a strategy that works for you. Everybody's situation is different. The guy who sits in the desk next to you may not have the same life plan that you do. So when he tells you it's 100% stock, that may not work for you. Everybody's got their own personal situation. Everybody's it's just a little bit different. So rebalancing your portfolio is really important. Paying down your credit cards, we already talked a little bit about. That should be one of your goals if you have credit card debt. If you owe money on credit cards, determine how much you can realistically afford to pay off during the year. And until you get that under control, try not to make any additional purchases on your cards while you're trying to pay down the cards that you owe. If you have high interest card balances, consider whether it be more beneficial to pay the high interest rates or add to your savings. That's, a lot of this is the highest and best use of money. If you're paying 20% on a credit card and you're earning 1% in your savings, it might make sense to pay down your credit cards.
And, a lot of people do come to us with that, specifically like with an automobile loan. Sometimes you can get a really good rate on those. And if you're sitting on cash, they're wondering if they should invest or pay off their car loan. A lot of times it makes more sense to invest.
Yeah, and think about it for the long haul. And investing, as an example, right now the mortgage rates are low. We wouldn't suggest refinancing your house just so you could go invest.
Mm-hmm.
But
correct.
If you are buying a house, it may make sense to finance as opposed to paying cash for it, just because. Everybody's situation is different.
It is.
You just have to work with somebody to figure out what works for you. Another thing that we haven't really talked about is at least once a year, and probably spread through the year with the 3 different credit agencies, you should review your credit report. A lot of people just in the last year, because of the problem with the credit reporting agency, have taken steps to look at their credit where they may not have before. But if you haven't done it, if you didn't do it then, you're entitled to 3 free credit reports a year, and there really isn't a good reason to not review that at least once a year. It's one of your most important financial documents, especially since errors in these reports are not really uncommon.
Yeah, and it's really hard to repair your credit too. So
it takes time.
It takes time, right?
But it can affect everything you do. If the credit cards we talked about, you get a higher rate depending on what those credit scores are. If you're going to buy a new car or whatever, your rates could be higher. You may be turned down for debt. Poor credit could adversely affect your ability to save, and it could result in paying higher interest on loans, which gets right at the heart of your disposable income. Next thing we wanted to talk about was reviewing your life insurance and disability needs. Did you want to talk a little bit about that, Tom?
Well, yeah, I think not everybody has life insurance, or they might not know if they need it, or really, I think it's a good time to take a look at that. Really, at all your insurance needs. So,
yeah, as you go through your career and your life, your disability and life insurance needs change. Give some thoughts, like you said, into how much protection you actually need. Compare it to the coverage you currently have, either through your employer's benefit package or what you have separate from that, and try to consider whether you need more or less than that. Determine if you need disability insurance coverage, and if you don't have it, maybe you need it. If you do have it, maybe you need a little bit more. Life insurance is a tricky thing. It's more than just burying yourself. A funeral may cost $10,000 or $12,000. But if you're a young couple with a young kid, one of you passes away, that puts the rest of the family in jeopardy. A lot of people don't want to do that. You have to take into account the lifetime costs of things like daycare, college education, maintenance of the home, in the event that one or the other is no longer there. So a lot of people, I think, are underinsured. And, it seemed like back in the day, your insurance people were all over the place and, selling life insurance. And at some point, there was a lot of talk about the difference between term insurance and whole life. We don't have that conversation as much anymore. Term seems to have taken over in a lot of ways. But even with term insurance, people may not have enough life insurance. A young couple with 2 young kids that they think are going to go to college probably need at least a couple $100,000 of life insurance. And if they have a mortgage, maybe it's closer to $300,000 to $500,000.
Right. And sometimes you have to look beyond what you might get at your work or through your employer, because sometimes that might not cover all of that. And it's not portable, too. So if you change jobs or if you become self-employed.
Yeah, employer life insurance is typically not portable. And even when you retire, a lot of times it goes away.
Right.
One of the things that we haven't really talked about yet that we probably should is establishing an emergency fund. If you haven't gotten one, most Americans are woefully unequipped to deal with the true financial emergency.
I think, if anything, that's probably one of the priorities as well, if you don't have one.
Yeah, we probably should have addressed it earlier. Yeah, I read an article that says 57% of U.S. adults have less than $1,000 in savings, while 39% don't have a workable emergency fund.
You should have 3 to 6 months, typically, is what we recommend, depending upon your of expenses. Sometimes it seems high, but it depends on your particular situation, really.
Yeah, if your emergency fund or stash is low or non-existent, then building some cash reserves could or should actually trump some of your other goals, like funding your nest egg or paying off credit card debt. If small changes in your budget don't do much to help boost your short-term savings, and you may need to be more aggressive. This might mean slashing some of your expenses just to create an emergency fund for your household. Because if I don't know what a good example would be. Well, if you're already maxed out on your credit cards and your washing machine goes, and you don't have any place to go to get that money, that is going to put you in a bind and may cause a whole domino effect on other bills that you have.
Yeah, and sometimes it makes sense. You also don't want to have, let's say, $5,000 in credit card debt, but $10,000 in savings.
Right.
So you want to balance that out.
Yeah,
too.
well, figure out what your true safety net is. It might be, for some people, they may be comfortable with a month.
Right.
But a month is probably not enough. A month worth of your actual bills, or not necessarily your income, but your actual bills that you have. Because if one of you loses your job for whatever reason, no matter how secure your job is, people at Sears 10 years ago thought their jobs were secure, or Kmart now. A lot of different places have put people at jeopardy, even though they may not really realize it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I think with all of this, I think it's just important to, pick a couple of these goals that make sense for you.
Educate yourself. And get with a financial planner, and those are the things that may help you get yourself together as you put together your New Year's resolution for finance, or as it relates to finance. This is Dave Weaver and Tom Pop with User Friendly Finance and SWC Wealth Management. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.
Yep. Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year.
David Weaver, Megan Wallen, Tom Pop. Securities offered through HD Vest Investment Services, member SIPC. Advisory services offered through HD Vest Advisory Services, 6333 North State Highway 161, 4th floor, Irving, Texas, 75038, 972-870-6000. SWC Wealth Management is not a registered broker-dealer or independent investment advisory firm.